Bitcoin. It's seemingly everywhere these days, and with the recent price run-ups and run-downs of 2020 and early 2021, we're seemingly always reaching new all-time highs with Bitcoin. Bitcoin hit $61,000 per coin on March 13th, just to come slightly back down, but still enough to tease the average investor with FOMO that they're all gonna miss the next rocket ship. We all know GameStop has been in a saga of volatility this year, but Bitcoin has had that same saga of volatility for the past 8 to 10 years. It's had an overall volatile ride up, there's a ton of media scrutiny, and there's always a question of whether it's going to become mainstream. What's up guys, it's Humphrey. Welcome back to my channel, and today I wanted to cover Bitcoin. I want to give you a little bit of backstory about where we are with Bitcoin, the rise of the price this year, and the reasons as to why I think it's happening, as well as if the average investor should hold some Bitcoin or maybe think about buying some Bitcoin this year or not. So let's begin first with the backstory. Bitcoin has been around since 2009, but the first that I had ever heard of it was probably in 2012 or 2013 when the Bitcoin price was around $70 or $80 per Bitcoin. The only way to buy it at the time was through sketchy exchanges, and you weren't really too sure if you were getting scammed or if the site was actually authentic. A funny story for you guys is that back in 2013, there's a local coffee shop near me in Silicon Valley called Coupa Cafe, and they actually accepted Bitcoin as payment. And at the time, I had bought one Bitcoin on some sketchy exchange for around $80 a coin. At that time, I was trying to spend a sixth of my Bitcoin on coffee for me and a friend. That's actually worth the equivalent of $9,000 of Bitcoin today. After a 5-minute back and forth with the employee behind the counter, I realized that my Bitcoin transaction was not going through, or something was wrong with it. So eventually I just ended up getting frustrated and paying for my coffee in cash. What I later realized is that Bitcoin transactions actually take between 15 and 30 minutes to actually confirm. So having Bitcoin as an accepted form of payment at a coffee shop is not very practical at all. And when I finally eventually got around to checking my Bitcoin balance a little bit later that week, I realized that they actually had taken the Bitcoin from me and there was no way to really get it back anymore. So that's a pretty funny story that I still tell these days. I could have had $9,000, but you coulda, woulda, shoulda. Now to give you a super brief overview of Bitcoin, it was basically created as a decentralized currency back in 2009. And the whole point of it is not to rely on a central authority such as a central government or central bank. Now, the main thing you need to know about Bitcoin for today's video is that there are currently 18.5 to 18.6 million Bitcoins in circulation, with a total cap of 21 million Bitcoin to ever be created that will be completely mined away by the year 2140. In my Bitcoin versus gold video here on YouTube, which I'll link here, I illustrated some very good arguments as to why Bitcoin could be considered a good store of value or a good safe haven asset. In short, Bitcoin is being seen more and more as a store of value these days, especially because it's quite scarce. There's only a finite number of them ever created. That, coupled with a liquid market, the fact that it has some utility, it's quite transparent to transact, as well as the rest of the world valuing it as well, makes it a good contender to a similar store of value such as gold. That's partially also the reason why many people have referred to it as digital gold. So what's with the recent Bitcoin price surge? Here are the reasons why I think it's happening. Number one, you have a lot of mainstream institution adoption of Bitcoin lately. Recently, Tesla bought $1.5 billion worth of Bitcoin. PayPal is going to start allowing people to transact Bitcoin, and Square even bought $170 million worth of Bitcoin just recently. This mainstream adoption is basically telling the rest of the market like, hey, we think this is cool, and if we think this is cool, maybe you guys should consider this pretty cool as well. It's kind of like when your best friend goes and buys $500 Golden Goose sneakers, and all of a sudden he's telling you,
man, these are the best sneakers around.
And you're really like, okay, are they really that cool though? And he's like,
yeah, trust me, they're really, really cool.
And then you start to get some FOMO because you're really not too sure if they're actually cool or if they're just being hyped up because your friend is so excited about it. Now, if you haven't heard of Golden Goose sneakers, first of all, be very thankful that you haven't been tempted by $500 sneakers that are meant to look dirty, but also I might be doing a review video on Golden Goose sneakers in the future as part of a new series, so be on the lookout for that. The second reason for the recent Bitcoin price surge, in my opinion, is that because Bitcoin is uncorrelated with the stock market and all of a sudden we have all this stimulus money coming in due to coronavirus, there's just really no good place to hold cash right now, especially because interest rates are almost at all-time lows. A lot of investors with extra cash are looking into the stock market for their cash to actually appreciate in value, and those that are invested in the stock market are looking at Bitcoin as a potential hedge for their stock market positions. Not to mention that Bitcoin can also be viewed as an inflationary hedge as well. The third reason why I think Bitcoin has been going up lately in terms of price is that more people are actually holding on to Bitcoin than flipping flipping. In recent weeks, I've been talking to a friend of mine on YouTube here named Booster Pack Reveal. I'll actually link his channel in the description below, but we've been talking more about NFT videos, but he's also been a big proponent of Bitcoin for the past 5 or 6 years. He put it really simply to me, most institutions that are buying Bitcoin are simply just holding it for the time being and not actually flipping it. According to Bloomberg, about 2% of all Bitcoin holders are actually responsible for owning 95% of Bitcoin's supply. That's pretty crazy to me. That means the average retail investor like you or me who's buying Bitcoin on an exchange like Gemini or Coinbase. By the way, use my link in description below for $10 of free Bitcoin when you sign up with Coinbase. But the average retail investor like you and I have little to no impact on the actual price of Bitcoin. So this should actually strengthen the argument for reason number one, which is as more institutions are bullish on Bitcoin, that's going to benefit the retail trader who's actually holding onto Bitcoin as well. So those are some of the reasons as to why I think Bitcoin has been surging recently, but what should the average investor be really considering when they're thinking about buying and holding Bitcoin? I personally believe that Bitcoin will go up in the medium to long term, but in the short term, it's going to be crazy volatile as it has been so far. Currently, there are limited methods to actually short Bitcoin, but if we ever do see inverse ETFs introduced or any type of derivative that makes it easier to bet against Bitcoin, we could see a correction. Now, I personally had 5% of my portfolio in Bitcoin and Ethereum as of last March of 2020, which has grown quite tremendously, but that was my original kind of strategy, was to just put a small percentage of my portfolio into cryptocurrencies and alternative assets and just hope for the best. So I've personally just been holding this entire time, but I have been looking for good spots to add to my Bitcoin position if I ever do see the price dip a little bit. I would say if you do really believe that Bitcoin is here to stay for the long term, then it's not such a bad idea to invest a little bit of your portfolio into Bitcoin for the future. I still view cryptocurrency as a method of diversification. Now, I don't really prescribe to the fact that your whole portfolio should be in Bitcoin, but I do think a larger percentage of your portfolio can be in Bitcoin, especially these days. A common gripe that people might have with Bitcoin is that the price is really steep, and I think that's just more of a psychological barrier to investing in Bitcoin than anything. You smart viewers of the channel will know that it's basically all in your head.
It's all a fugazi. You know what a fugazi is? Fairy dust. It doesn't exist.
Some companies will actually split their shares. For example, Tesla and Apple last year both did stock splits. That's basically when they take one of your shares and split them into 4 or 5 different pieces. The actual value of your ownership never changed, and the actual value of Apple never really changed. However, it allowed the average investor to buy in a little bit easier because the price per share was a lot lower. The price is simply a function of the market cap or the shares or coins outstanding. Now, in the case of Bitcoin, there will never ever be more than 21 million Bitcoins ever created. A better way to evaluate Bitcoin is the total market cap of Bitcoin, which is the total worth of all Bitcoin outstanding. Today, the market capitalization of Bitcoin is $1 trillion. Now, if Bitcoin were a company, that would still put it behind other big companies such as Amazon, Apple, Microsoft, and Google. So if the biggest deterrent for you right now is the price of Bitcoin, I'd like to remind you guys that prices are all arbitrary. I would say just focus on the long-term prospects of the investment and don't be so concerned about the fractional nature of the amount of Bitcoin you're going to be getting. So I know $100 is worth about 0.0018 Bitcoins, and that can seem really demotivating when you're buying Bitcoin. But remember, prices are all arbitrary and it's all in your head, so don't let that get to you. All right, guys, so those are my reasons and thoughts on the recent Bitcoin price run up. Let me know your thoughts in the comments as well. Make sure to drop a like and subscribe on this video if you haven't already, and also tick the notification bell in case you want to be notified whenever I drop a new video. If you'd like to buy Bitcoin, make sure to watch my video on how to invest in cryptocurrency, and also make sure to use the link in my description below if you'd like to buy cryptocurrency on Coinbase and get $10 worth of free Bitcoin in the process. Lastly, thanks to all my Patreon supporters for being here. Over on the Patreon, I do give you access to my exact stock portfolio as well as share anytime I buy or sell a stock. All right, guys, see you in the next video. Peace.